Vincent ignored Frey's complaints as he carried her through the hierarchy building, because he knew there was no way she'd be able to keep up with him on her own if he ran as fast as he wanted through the structure. To be honest, he wasn't even sure how he was managing her weight at the speed he was going. Not to mention all the surprised looks he was getting as he ran through the halls carrying her over his shoulders. Aides, politicians, and other staffers had to jump out of his way as he barreled on through, ignoring cries of protest or anger following behind him. He'd waited more than long enough for this. "Which landing pad?" he asked when he finally got to one of the lift stations. "I won't tell you until you put me down," Frey demanded. He sighed and shifted to set her back on her feet. "What's wrong with you? I said don't draw any attention." "Yeah, well, you really should have known that wasn't going to happen. No one to blame but yourself." She stared at him while he kept jabbing the call button for each one of the lifts. "Which one are we taking?" "Draconic sector." She nodded to the first button he'd pressed, and he moved back over to the lift, ignoring the various chimes as the other lifts arrived. Once the one he was waiting for opened, he dragged Frey inside and then held down the door close button. Even when the doors were closed, he held that button down still, and then held down the button for the landing pad. He wasn't going to let anyone else stop this lift for even a moment. "Vincent, you have to relax a little," Frey mentioned as he just glanced at her. "Mock's prepared?" "No, I just got the news to you. He's assembling his commandos, so you've got time to head back to your apartment and get whatever it is you need. Then I'll call the rest of the team together to join him." "No." Vincent shook his head. "We're not at full strength, and we haven't had enough training time. This is going to be an exceptionally dangerous mission. Leave the team out of it. If anything Bryan told me is true, this will be an extremely fortified position. I don't want the team to get used to mass assaults. I want them to get trained for small missions fighting criminals. Leave the commandos to fight missions like this." Frey tilted her head and shrugged. "All right, if you insist." They were getting close to the landing pads, so Vincent stopped pressing the buttons down, and after another 30 seconds, the doors opened to reveal the draconic landing pad for the building. It was much larger than the others because of how many dragons were part of the hierarchy, and how seldom they flew together. Craft pooled? Was there a term for that? Vincent shrugged and began to jog out towards the only craft that still had its engines running. The silver-armored satyrs standing around it were also a good indicator. This wasn't the dragonfly they'd used before, but a fatter craft. There weren't any doors on the side, but rather a ramp up the back. It was taller than most craft he'd seen as well. With how tall dragons were, they probably needed the extra space. He boarded the back ramp and noticed the seats were on the sides with room in the center for crates or equipment. It probably got used as more of a military vehicle than the patrol craft, so he supposed the design change made sense. The satyrs didn't say a word as Frey boarded after Vincent. Instead, everyone sat down and got strapped in as the craft began to lift off. As the ramp closed, Vincent realized it was also much quieter in this craft compared with the patrol variant. He didn't need his mask or comm gear to talk. So, it's on the bottom level like Bryan thought? Frey had been briefed about Bryan's existence a week or so ago, as Vincent had prepared to set her up as the base commander for the team instead of the field commander. He hadn't been sure at the time if he'd use them or not when the time came, but he always figured that informing his friends and allies about everything possible was the best course of action. Yes, it is. I don't know more than that at the moment. I was just told to come and find you. If Kuyina had been informed, she could have had one of the guards at the hierarchy building get me. But I'm guessing Mock hasn't told her. Does he plan on telling her? He was focused on the faceless silver masks of the other satyrs when he asked, as if they could betray anything from behind the reflective surface. I have no idea, Frey answered. I get the feeling he doesn't plan on telling her until after, however. I'm not sure if he's worried that there are still traitors among the Yervesh, or if he wants to secure their tech for himself. Vincent shrugged. Kuyina is a good person, but the rest of the council? I don't know about the rest of them. There are times when they seem to think they're occupying a hostile city, not policing their own citizens. He'd heard that the development of a frag grenade for patrol was on track. The thought still horrified him. Vincent glanced around at the other satyr once more, and then spoke again. I know Mach is your grand employer or whatever, but let's say that he wasn't. If he was another dragon you didn't work for, do you think he'd be the kind of guy to use his power for evil? They were quiet for a moment, until the one closest to him spoke up. I can't really imagine ever questioning our orders, but I believe that he's trying to make life better for everyone in the Union. Then the satyr shrugged. That's all I can say. Vincent nodded. I've seen into his head, and I believe that as well. I just don't get the sense he's purely out for his own power. Or, at least what power he seeks will be used to improve lives. Then he looked at Frey. You had your own dragon to protect back in the day. Thoughts? Mine was never a significant player like, Mach is. Vincent smiled as Frey hesitated to use the dragon's short name. She preferred his long form, or at least something less casual. But Vincent literally had no idea why anyone would prefer using a name that takes 3 or 4 minutes to get through. But I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I've seen those that use their power purely for personal gain, and Mach isn't one of them. Well, there you go. Vincent replied with a shrug. Things were quiet for a moment until Frey spoke once more. So, what's with you and Karana? Vincent sighed and scratched his chin. I don't know. She got pissed when I told her someone else was interested in me, and stormed off before I could make sense of the situation. She's starting to talk to me now, but I can tell she's still upset. I keep trying to tell her nothing happened between me and the other woman, but she's still not satisfied, it seemed. Do you love her? I heard about how you two... that night. Vincent was quiet for a moment before he shrugged. I don't know. I care for everyone on the team. I really do. You, Harmacad, the twins, Mong, everyone. I always care for the members of my team, even back when I was leading criminals. The only people in my life that I know I love are my mom and dad. I used to love a mentor, as if he were my father. I was ready to fight and die for his beliefs, until I learned the truth. I've never had anyone else care enough about me to make me even think about asking that question. Karana. He paused as he thought it over, picking his words. I'm not sure. I don't know if she told you how we met. I was hunting her boyfriend at the time. Or next, I suppose. Anyway, he'd killed me and I was going to kill him back. She tracked me down and literally led me to him. I stomped him to death right in front of her, and then she started crying and I pulled her up and tried to talk some sense into her. I gave her money to just, I don't know, go make a new life. What did she do? She found you and Mong and spent all the money she had on gear, and then the 3 of you found me near Little Otistov and got wrapped up in a homicidal mob. I don't know if she honestly loves me, or if my killing her boyfriend simply made me the new alpha male, and she doesn't know any other kind of relationship. So, when she heard about the other woman, she freaks out. Vincent sighed and shrugged yet again. Frey, I don't know. She might be happier without me. I might be too fucked up to love anyone, or at least give them a happy life. She might be fucked up too from whatever shitty life she had that made her stay with a man that beat her and cheated on her. Do I care about her? Yes. Do I love her as one of my comrades in arms? Yes. Do I love her in the sense you mean? In the sense she seems to want? I don't know. I've never had to answer that question before. I'm not sure what it's supposed to feel like. Frey was watching him with a concerned look in her eyes when she reached out to squeeze his shoulder. He smiled and gave her hand a squeeze in return. Sounds to me like both of you could use some therapy or something. I've already got a counselor. His advice is to keep killing stuff, Vincent said with a grin, as Frey sighed and rolled her eyes. Diverting isn't the answer. I'm positive it is, he replied. We're coming into land. He heard the pilot yell back from up front, giving him a reprieve from any more of Frey's questions and comments. He felt the craft settle down and opened the safety harness before walking down the ramp that was opening up. They dropped him off on the landing pad closest to his. All he had to do was go get the gold sphere from his apartment, so he set himself into a steady jog toward his complex. The life of the city was going on all around him as usual. People heading to shops, to and from work, off to a meal. None of them had any idea what sort of battle was ready to unfold in the depths of the city. Once inside his building, it was a quick trip up to his apartment and inside. He had spent quite a bit of time recently with the orb, and a bit of synth to calm his nerves so he could sleep. It was just inside his bedroom in the same box as always. Opening it up, he gripped the orb and tried to focus on the warmth that spread from it up his hand. You'll be free soon, Mom, he promised, and then tucked the orb into a pocket on his jacket. After that, he simply headed back to the craft without incident. Even as he was walking up the ramp, it began to lift off and close the ramp behind him. Got it? Frey asked, and he snorted. Huh. You think I'd forget it? Just checking. We're headed up to Mock's estate so you can get your gear and join up with the rest. I'll be helping coordinate with some of Mock's own officers, since I don't need to guide the team. Sounds good, Vincent said with a nod. As the craft moved, you could tell Frey wanted to ask something, but she either decided against it, or couldn't figure out the best way to ask and kept quiet instead. In fact, no one else said anything for the rest of the trip up to Mock's estate. The satyr never seemed to be especially talkative. Then again, Frey was the only one he'd spoken with for an extended period, honestly. Even so, he noticed how rarely they volunteered any sort of information. He was perfectly comfortable sitting in the craft with only the hum of the engines to make any noise, and soon enough the pilot was yelling back again, Coming into land! This time, everyone removed their straps when the craft touched down, and they headed out the back ramp. When they stepped out, Vincent was in a section of the estate he wasn't familiar with. It seemed to be a large platform behind the mansion. Since he had always come in through the gate in the garden, he had never seen this. The landing pads spread around were larger than the deck of an aircraft carrier, and he could see every single pad was being used. The sights were made more impressive as the clouds drifted past the sun, and everything was suddenly bathed in the golden rays. It almost hurt his eyes as the gleaming silver armor of the satyr was reflected all over the place. He still wasn't used to so much natural light, after spending so long in the depths of the city. The warmth on his skin felt good, but odd at the same time. There was a satyr he'd never seen before, in what looked to be an extra special suit of armor, that had some sort of rank ribbons along the shoulders. Your gear is ready in the armory. Our employer is also preparing in there, and you're expected. Vincent nodded and started heading to a tunnel that apparently led down into the armory in a more direct path than heading through the mansion. As he walked, he looked around at all the craft being prepared. He counted a dozen of those dragonflies, 8 craft like the one he'd flown in on, and 4 that had to be dedicated weapons platforms. They looked very sleek with forward-swept wings, and 2 tail fins that dipped down instead of up. He could see numerous weapons pods hanging on the wings as well. As he watched, the 4 pushed their engines and lifted off, making the tail fins gleam red. He'd call them red-tail hawks. As he headed down the tunnels, he passed a number of satyr walking past. They were really loaded for bear. He saw talon rifles, scatterguns, some sort of shoulder launcher, and also the quick-firing SMGs. He'd been trying to break the habit of calling them queers, even if that was the damn acronym. On top of that, they were carrying quite a bit of ammo as well. This wasn't going to be a minor action, that was for sure. Once he found the armory proper, he nodded to the satyrs standing guard, and then paused as he saw some new Xenos he'd never seen standing to the sides. They were taller than him by about half a meter, and while not as imposing as dragons, they certainly had a very stout appearance. They had 4 arms total, and their legs looked like they had 2 sets of knees, one forward and one backwards, which ran down to feet tipped with 4 talons spread out evenly. They were wearing very intricate blue and white armor, covered in irregular grooves and ridges that he figured must be either rank or cultural, because the two he saw had different patterns. Their lower hands gripped short-barrel weapons, while their upper set gripped the hilts of some sort of daggers that were sheathed at their hips. Neither of the unknown Xenos seemed to react to his presence, but like the satyr, they wore helmets that completely covered their faces, so he had no idea if there was any reaction beneath the masks. After standing there for a moment examining them, he finally walked past and into the armory proper. As he opened the door, he immediately heard talking.
Surely your commandos can handle this. What you're proposing is absurd!
He saw the deep sapphire blue dragon from Mach's memory.
What was her name?
She was wearing a very elaborate red dress with gold trim that offset her blue very nicely. Mach, meanwhile, wasn't in one of his usual suits. Instead, he was strapping armor to his wrists, the last touches on a suit of armor he had mostly gotten into already. The dragon looked damn impressive in the shimmering gold plate that had probably been worked on by the finest craftsmen in the Union. Unlike the unknown Xenos outside with their rigid and grooved armor, what Mach wore was plain. Well, as plain as gold armor could be. Minva, my dear, a good leader needs to lead from the front at times.
You have trained officers for that?
Just because my wonderful employees do not hesitate in risking their lives for my cause, does not mean I should expect them to keep doing so without risking my own life for the same cause. Don't you think, Vincent? As Mach said that, the blue dragon turned to look at him, crossing her arms as she did.
You're the very reason he's got it into his head that he needs to go down there.
Nonsense. I'm not under any misconception that my death would be permanent, unlike my friend here. Vincent felt unprepared for the withering gaze of the female dragon, before she finally sighed and seemed to relent.
I can't stop you any more than I can halt the rotation of the planet, so I suppose I should simply do my best to accept it.
Then she pointed at Vincent.
You keep him safe, or every one of your clones will answer to me.
With that, she marched out past him, and he saw the unknown Xenos fall into place behind her, following her out. Vincent, lend me a hand. Vincent looked back at Mach, who had picked up a collar of some sort and was trying to fit it around his neck, but was having trouble hooking it up behind his neck. Vincent looked around and found someone had left behind a stepladder, perhaps for this purpose. As he stepped up, Mach curled his wings forward to let Vincent get at the back of his neck. Vincent had to lean against some sort of backpack covered in lights and wiring, but he managed to reach the dragon's neck. He clipped the thing in place and was about to ask what it was for when Mach pulled on a helmet designed to fit his massive head, snapping it into the collar to hold it in place. Once everything was in place, the dragon stretched for a moment, making sure everything fit well before turning to face Vincent. So, do I look ready to lead my commandos into battle? Mach, you're covered in gold. You're going to be drawing the attention of everyone with a weapon in a 5-kilometer radius. What are you thinking? The dragon snorted. Huh. I've got a personal shielding unit. I'll be all right. You guys have those? I never even heard of such a thing. They're extremely rare, to say the least. He shifted his wings and partially turned to point out the backpack. It's repurposed from a builder relic. They were using it as a shielding unit for a reactor. Then we modified the reactor and created a plasma cannon. Only a few such devices have ever been produced, due to our inexperience with the room temperature superconductors the builders have. Vincent got the feeling that was supposed to impress him, but he really wasn't sure what it meant. I've really got no idea what most of that means. I'm assuming the plasma cannon is very powerful, though. Yes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get it. We keep it in a special room. I'll meet you back out on the landing pad. The dragon nodded and stepped through the door, heading out and down the hall as the satyr who had been guarding the armory followed him. Vincent looked around for his gear and began to pull his harness on. The one Mach provided was so much nicer than the basic patrol harness. It just felt... what was the word? ergonomic. Yeah, nothing like fighting in comfort. He still wished that someone had made him some damn armor, though. Just because he could keep coming back didn't mean he wanted to get shot all the time. As he was pulling the harness into place, he heard another voice, which startled him for a second. I bet you're more prepared for this than I am. Bryan was standing in the doorway. He had his own harness on, but Vincent noticed that it was a medic kit of some sort. Lots of syringes and kits, no explosives or other toys. He also noticed the other human had 2 hands. How'd they do that? They fix up one of my hands for you somehow? Nah, this is robotic. He lifted it up and gave it a slow squeeze before relaxing the fist. It doesn't feel quite right, but it sure feels a lot better than a damn hook, I'll tell you that. Vincent snorted. What did they think of your medical expertise? Practically shit themselves. Except that one, gecko chameleon thing. The girl. She was fascinated. Vincent nodded. Yeah, Zerny's like that. Looks like you're all set to help out. I'm glad you're coming with us. Though I wish you'd drop the oath and pick up a weapon. Bryan laughed at that. Shit! I killed a bunch of those fuckers when they were chasing me, kid. You think I'm sticking to the do no harm shit? They're aliens, like I give a shit. Vincent frowned. Xenos. Bryan just shrugged and walked over to a wall locker. He punched in a code and pulled out something that made Vincent arch his brows in surprise. Is that a Springfield? Bryan grinned as he hefted the wood stock rifle with iron sights. Not even a scope. You like it? No, I don't like it. Are you crazy? Vincent exclaimed as the other human frowned this time. Why don't you like it? We're on top of a city made of space-age materials, in the very heart of a system-spanning, space-faring nation with untold technology. You passed a dragon on your way in here with some sort of ray-shielding shit on his way to pick up a plasma cannon. And you asked them to make you a bolt-action rifle? Well, I know how to use a bolt-action rifle, and I don't know how to use a plasma cannon. What's your excuse, Mr. Revolver? Vincent glanced at the magnum on his hip. This was a gift. I didn't have a choice. Besides, Mach later made this for me. He walked over to the crate Mach had left behind for him, opening it up to pull out the submachine gun inside, turning and displaying it to Bryan. The hell you planning on hunting with a damn machine gun? You'd break a tooth on all the bullets in your steak. Submachine gun, Vincent insisted. And I'm hunting bad guys, not food. I've never been hunting for food before. Just people. Urban combat is all I know. Well, hunting is all I know. So I asked for a bolt-action rifle. And I bet I'm a damn better sight at 100 yards with this than you are with that thing, boy. Vincent snorted and shrugged. Yeah, you probably are. But I can kill 10 people 10 meters from me very easily. You can ask them to hold on while you reload, but they probably won't be inclined to do so. The 2 humans studied each other for several long seconds, before they each started to laugh at the same time, as they realized how absurd their argument was. Vincent stepped up, and they awkwardly shifted so they could trade weapons for a moment, as each inspected what the other was using. How's the recoil on this thing? Bryan asked as he shifted the gun in his hands. It's pretty hard. You really have to lean into it, but it knocks the bad guys on their ass. Why didn't you get a scope? He asked in turn, as he aimed down the iron sights. He'd only seen Springfields in history books and the like, so he wasn't sure if these were the same, but they made sense as he clicked the little dial at the back to adjust the range. All the scopes they have need a power source. I wasn't going to let them slap a pack of copper tops on the side, so I just said screw it and explained a basic sighting system. Vincent nodded and worked the bolt then. It was a very clean pull. He handed it back and took his own weapon from Bryan. Do they at least have a stripper clip or something for the rounds? Bryan shook his head, which made Vincent chuckle. Have fun hand-loading every shot then. I just need to make sure they count. He paused then and looked Vincent over. Do you have the orb? Vincent hesitated as he looked at the other man, but after some consideration, he reached into his pocket and pulled the orb out. He felt the warmth radiating out right away as he stared at it. I should probably be the one to hold on to it. What? He pulled the orb back from Bryan reflexively, even though the other human hadn't reached for the orb. I'm going to be in the back. I'm a medic with a bolt-action rifle after all. You're going to be up front. What if you die in the attack? Vincent set his mouth for a moment as he thought about what Bryan was saying. After a few seconds, he finally nodded and handed it over. Bryan carefully held the orb and smiled. Hey, you can feel her, can't you? Be careful. Vincent stressed. Bryan nodded and tucked the orb into the main medical kit on his lap. You ready? Almost. Vincent turned back to the crate he'd pulled his Chicago typewriter from and loaded a magazine into it, before collecting every other stick magazine in the crate. He liked how many bullets were in the drums, but the sticks were easier to maneuver and reload. Once he'd clipped every magazine there was to his harness, he then grabbed several more rounds for his magnum and tucked them away in some of the harness's pouches. He shifted for a moment, and then jumped, and didn't feel any loss of mobility. Okay. Turning to face Bryan, he nodded for a moment, then opened his arms wide. What are you doing? Come on. Look, my family isn't much for hugging. Well, mine is. Vincent didn't give the other human a chance to escape as he stepped up and clutched him tight. With all the gear they were wearing, it was awkward, but Vincent still squeezed him tight. I'm not letting you go till you hug me back, he muttered, and heard Bryan's defeated sigh. Fine. Finally, he hugged Vincent back. Vincent pulled back when he felt something warm pressing against his hip, until he realized it was the orb in Bryan's medical kit. They were both quiet for a moment until the light faded, and the kit looked normal once more. I think she's somehow aware of this? I don't know, but we're saving her. Today, Vincent promised. Oh, wait. He turned and grabbed two of his masks from where they were hanging on the wall. He quickly pulled his into place and then helped Bryan into his. Oh, what the hell? What's all this menu stuff? He tried to reach up as if to hit the buttons, but Vincent pulled his hand down. It's projected into your eyes. You look at the menu you want and then swipe your eyes left or right depending on what side it's on. Just select last known profile. I tweaked it to a more comfortable setting. It should work for you as well. There was a pause as Bryan got it figured out. All right. That's kind of strange, but I guess I get it. You'll get used to it. Here, go to the comm channels and then select a private frequency. Okay. Which one? You should see the one called Atlantis. It's one I made sure was clear and set it up. Haven't had a need to use it till now. All right, I think I got it. Let me test it. Vincent selected the channel himself and turned off external broadcast with a few quick eye swipes. Can you hear me? Yeah, Bryan echoed out as Vincent heard him over the comm and in person. Turn off external broadcast, Vincent suggested, and after a moment Bryan tried again. This better? There wasn't an echo. Yeah, perfect. Now come on. The two of them walked out of the armory, Vincent taking the lead for a moment, but then purposefully pausing so they could walk side by side. If somehow I don't make it out of this, you better treat her right. What do you mean? You'll just come back as another clone. Just promise me, all right? Why do you even think you need to say that? If I treated her poorly, she'd dump me in a second. She's got her own mind, you know. Look, I've never really had to deal with this sort of thing before. My mother never had, anyone. Just promise me you'll look after her. I know that she wouldn't pick a guy if he was a piece of shit, and you're probably a great guy. But could you please promise me? Yeah, sorry. I keep thinking you got some idea in your head that I'm something other than I really am. I need to be less defensive. I promise no matter what to take care of your mother. Thanks. They were quiet as they walked back out of the hallways. Once they were climbing back up into the light and out into the landing pad, Vincent stopped. The traffic had changed. It looked like all the other craft he'd seen before were in the air, loaded with satyrs, no doubt. But now, on the landing pad, was the largest craft he'd ever seen. He counted at least 4 separate VTOL turbofans, and saw several weapon ports jutting out of the sides. It was a monster, that was for certain. I guess we're flying in style. That thing's bigger than an AC-130, Bryan muttered in surprise. Is it? Vincent had never seen one in person. They'd been outdated long before he was born. But since Bryan had apparently been in the rebellions in the old American South, he might have seen them firsthand. Yeah, this thing looks to be maybe twice as wide. Probably to fit all those damn guns, or maybe big cargo. Do they have tanks here? You know, I have no clue, Vincent said with a shrug. They finally started moving forward once more, down to Mach, who was waiting for them. So glad you could join us, he said with a grin, hefting some sort of device which must be the plasma cannon. It looked like something you'd mount on a vehicle, not carry by hand. Besides that, it was high-tech looking, all right. Sort of a mini turbine engine in shape, with various tubes and circuits on the outside. Mach also had 6 satyr clustered around him, and they all had gold stripes on their armor, which Vincent figured must mean they were the Dragon's Honor Guard or equivalent. We're ready. Looks like you are too. What is this monster? The Dragon-class assault craft, Mach said, clearly proud of his transportation. Only 2 of these are allowed on the planet. The other one belongs to the Tax Enforcement Agency. But they had some misfortune with maintenance parts and it's grounded. So sad. Mach turned to start walking to the craft as Vincent kept up. What about those lighter attack craft? Haven't seen them before. The heavy assault weapon kit craft. Seriously? So they're hawks? What? Like the bird of prey. An acronym. Hawk. Oh, yes, I suppose so. What is it with you and your love of acronyms? Mach snorted as he walked. Despite the size and bulk of the thing he was carrying, he wasn't slowing down any. I don't know. Cultural, maybe? Vincent ventured with a shrug. Somewhere in our history, our military has developed an unhealthy obsession with acronyms, Bryan said. Especially the one with 3 letters. They also hold a special fondness for those. They were called TLAs. TLA? Mach asked. A 3-letter acronym. Mach and Vincent both laughed as he said that. An acronym for acronyms. Yes, that does sound like an unhealthy obsession. Mach agreed. Then he shifted the plasma cannon in his arms and climbed up into the side of the massive dragon craft. Inside were about 50 more satyr commandos, and 2 walking mechs that Vincent had never seen before. They were rather squat, square body, chunky legs, and weapons bolted onto the outside. They didn't look very refined, or nearly as fancy as most of the stuff Mach used. Those are on loan from the Urvesh. Just don't tell them. That would explain it. Mach had a special seat to strap into at the center of the craft, so Vincent and Bryan headed down to 2 open seats way at the back next to the ramp. They sat down and strapped in, before Vincent heard Bryan on the private channel, so only the 2 of them could hear. You think we're finding a way back home? Hard to tell. I heard some stuff. Makes me think it's possible. I also think it would be a terrible idea to let the Union know where we are. What? You're the one who's been protecting them all year. You think they're bad? No. I think just as they've always done, they'd want to uplift us and bring us into the Union. And I think that would destroy the Union. Oh, what are you talking about? This government couldn't survive us, Bryan. They've got a strange blend of politics that seems to work for them. But can you imagine trying to incorporate us? They've got heavy taxation so that everyone can get food and water and shelter, but slums on a scale we couldn't comprehend back home. They're democratic, but weight votes. All resources are heavily controlled and monitored, yet they've got some capitalistic tendencies. The Dragons, who are mostly in charge of policy, now fight as a whole to ensure the Union is fair and treats everyone well, but at the same time is open for massive corruption. One individual was almost able to stir up massive riots across the city that would have brought this all down. If you toss in our ability to organize crime, manipulate votes, and game the system, the Union would just collapse. There are good people back home too, you know. Not just the scum you used to hang out with. But for all the good people, how many bad people do you think it would take to use this government to their own ends? It would get torn apart. Even our good people would balk at the constant surveillance and lack of privacy. They track and monitor everything. We just came out of one of the most violent periods in our history. You were there for some of it. We're used to fighting for our rights and our beliefs. Do you think we'd really trust them to fix the system for us? Not to mention, I have no idea where I'd be placed in terms of the hierarchy. Who is going to accept us being anything less than on top? Either we demand better treatment for those who won't contribute, or no help for them at all. Or, I don't know. We'd demand all of it. We'd probably split along ideological lines, some with the Xenos, some as xenophobes who'd only want to associate with our people. Then how long do you think it would take before terrorist campaigns began? Demanding more money be spent on X, or less money on Y, or more resources for whoever. We'd fight. We always fight. Vincent finally stopped and took a deep breath. Bryan hadn't interrupted, and instead just sat quietly listening to him. You think so? Look, this system is at a sort of uneasy junction between socialist, capitalist, and fascist. It works for them. It's been working for them. But we're all or nothing. Some people would want all socialist or all capitalist, and others would want it all fascist. The Union would simply not survive. The Dragons hold the most power, but they built up these armies. He waved a hand around them. They have little empires to call their own, because that's just who they are. So, if they start to get out of control, there's something concrete to attack like we are now. But you know as well as I that a few well-placed extremists would have no problem spending years or decades getting into place and then tearing it all down in an instant. For as much pain and suffering as the Wardens have caused with their plan, their goal is more control and more power for people at the top. They don't want to see the world burn for the sake of burning. That's our bit. Maybe you just haven't met everyone. But maybe you're right. Either way, we'll have to see how this plays out. We might not have any say in the matter. But if we do, I'm going to try and stop Mock from finding our home. Even if that would stop you and your mother from getting home? Vincent was quiet after Bryan asked that. It was a good question, and he didn't really have an answer for it, so he thought it over. If I can't get you two home without revealing the location to Mock and the others, then yes. I'd rather save the billions of citizens of the Union than risk it. Well then, let's hope it doesn't come to that, because while you might be okay living out your days with all these aliens, but I want to go home. I want to see our people again. Xenos. Vincent quietly corrected once more. And don't you think their technology could help us? It's not like our home is in great shape right now with all the red zones. And who knows what's happened since you killed that EE fucker? Maybe a revolt broke out. Vincent shrugged. There's, 4 billion people now? 3.5? There's something like 3 billion people here on this one planet. One planet, Bryan. What's worth more? Saving some of our own, or risking billions, maybe tens of billions of theirs? Because you might believe in God and creation and all that, but I hope you understand. The people who've been helping me, who've been helping you, they're all people. Sometimes the people at the top just look at the numbers as nothing but statistics. But we have to look past that. How many families, how many lives would be ruined if the Union collapsed? Bryan was quiet once more. Vincent was as well. They both had things to think about as Mock's forces dropped through the city to whatever lay in wait below. There was a good chance Vincent would play the big role in the events to come. Would he be the Phoenix, burning bright to shine the way? Or would he be the Shade, destined to drag those around him down to hell? He thought on the data slate recordings of that scientist he knew he'd killed, but also on Karana. Frey, and the rest of his team. He knew he had both inside him. Or maybe they were both the same thing. A bright flame casts a long shadow. Time would tell how this day would be remembered.